Hi, I am so excited today to talk to you about garlic. I have actually attempted to grow garlic several times, probably about 3 times now, and have not been successful. But this is the first time that I have been successful. And so I wanted to walk you through how to grow garlic here in Florida. So first things first, you do have to start out with a certain variety of garlic, and that is a soft-necked or a Creole type garlic. Now I have 3 different kinds here, and I know it kind of looks like a mess right now, but I have Inchulum Red, Silver Rose, and Early Italian. But there are a ton of different types of soft-necked and Creole varieties that do better here in Florida. Now, the second thing that you have to do is determine the right time to grow. And there is a lot of preparation you have to do for planting garlic here in Florida. So first off, just so that you understand some of the timelines I went by, I got my seed garlic in August. I think it was like mid to late August. And then I planted it in November. So what did I do between August and November? Well, that is called vernalization. And vernalization is basically like cold treating the cloves of garlic. So when you have garlic, it's a bulb, right? And in each bulb, there are cloves, multiple cloves all the way around and in the center. And so in order for this crop to grow, that clove has to have that vernalization or that cold treatment. Now don't put it in the freezer. Vernalization is a temperature around, I think it's like 20 to 50 degrees or something like that. So that is more like refrigerator temperature. So step 3 of growing garlic is vernalization. And that means from the time that you get it in August or September until you're ready to plant in November or December, you put these whole head or whole bulb of garlic into the refrigerator. Now I put it into a paper bag to help reduce the amount of humidity and moisture that it will experience in a humid environment like your refrigerator. You want to keep it in the refrigerator for at minimum 6 weeks. I prefer 12 weeks. Because when you do 6 weeks, if you have temperature fluctuations and things like that, once you put it in the garden, it might break fertilization and it won't bulb. And so I think maybe that happened with some of my earlier bulbs because some of them did not bulb, like this one, for example, never bulbed. Now I probably could have left it longer, but the plant had basically died off, so I knew that the vernalization did not work. So at minimum, keep them in your refrigerator for 12 weeks if you can. Now the next thing I did is while they're sitting in the refrigerator, I took my bed and I raked it really good. I put a layer of compost and I actually sprinkled in bone meal and blood meal. And I made sure that the soil was nice and soft and not compacted. Now, in a raised bed, I typically don't have really compact dirt anyway, but I made sure it was a bed where I didn't have a lot of root system left from other plants. So I think these were beans before. The next thing that I did was make sure that the bed that I was putting them in was a full sun bed. That means this bed right here gets about 6 to 8 hours of Florida full sun. In other states, it could be less or it could be more hours. In Florida, full sun is about 6 to 8 hours. It does get a tiny bit of shade like in the afternoon after about 4 or 5. So make sure it's a nice, very full sun bed, no shade, as best as you can. So I put my blood meal, my bone meal, I made sure the dirt was nice and fluffy and soft so that the garlic could grow around it. And then I took a bunch of mulch, and this was leaf litter from my tree. I have a small home chipper, so I chip up some dead branches that fall off my tree out front, and then I take a ton of our grass clippings, which we have an enormous amount. And my first set of mulch was about that thick, so about 4 inches deep. The next thing I did was I took my bulb when it was in November. I really kind of waited until I made sure that we were starting to get cooler nights. So that was around, I think November 26th was the first round I did. I actually planted these 3 weeks apart, and I did 4 plantings. So I just did like one bulb, then another bulb, and then another bulb, spacing them 3 weeks apart. Because I wasn't exactly sure whether mid to late November was the right time frame, or if December would be a better time frame. And we had a lot of fluctuations in temperature this year. It got really hot in December. And then we didn't get our first frost until mid-January, but they did do fine, even with those weird fluctuations, and I attribute that to the mulch that I did. I did a lot of mulch. So what you do when you go to plant them, so you've waited and you've done your vernalization, they've been in the refrigerator, you take them out and you break this head up into individual cloves. And you take one of the cloves and you just put your finger down into the soil. my little garden buddies. I put my finger down into the soil till it was all the way up to the top, to my fingertip, all the full length of my finger. You really want these to go down about 4 or 5 inches, particularly here in Florida. The further you can get them down, the better off they're gonna stay cool. So I just stick my finger down to make a hole. I break off one of the cloves, keeping the paper wrapping of the clove on it. Don't break them out as if you would for cooking. And then pointy side up, so the pointy side of the garlic, which is the top side of the garlic right here, with the flat part, which is the base goes down because that's where the roots come from, and the pointy side goes up because that's where the stalks will come out. And you push that all the way down, like I said, 4, 5, even 6 inches. And then I covered it up with the dirt and with the mulch that I had, that 4 inches of mulch. And then I watered it in really good. So for the first 2 weeks, I probably watered it, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a week. Not a long time, like a 5-minute rinse off of water, just to make sure. And then it was about 3 or 4 weeks, I started to see the sprouts come out. Once I saw the sprouts come out, I reduced my watering to every 2 weeks, or twice a week for about 20 minutes. And I have a sprayer system, a micro sprayer. I don't have drip irrigation, which is a whole nother conversation. But if you have drip irrigation or a micro sprayer or a sprinkler system, just set it for twice a week, very early in the morning, for about 20 or 30 minutes. And I did that through the entire time that I had the garlic. I also started fertilizing. So it's a heavy feeder during the initial time. And I found that the bone meal and the blood meal that I put down wasn't really cutting it. So I started using like a fish fertilizer, which was like, I think a 4-2-1 nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus. And even then, while they were still very young, they started to get very wimpy and the bottom of the leaves got kind of yellow. So I knew that I wasn't using enough fertilizer. I switched to a 10-10-10 fertilizer, and I did that every 2 weeks, and it was a water soluble kind, which helped the plants absorb it. At the same time, I was still putting down tomato tone, which I put through my entire garden once a month. Now, it bounced back from that. They got very green. They started to get very tall, very bushy. It was great. The downside is they're not organic because I have not been able to find a 10-10-10 fertilizer or a high fertilizer like that is organic. So if you do know one, let me know, because I would love to get it. So anyway, I didn't end up being able to do an organic because they just were struggling with just the garden tone or the tomato tone, the blood meal, the bone meal, and the fish fertilizer. Once I switched to a 10-10-10, that's all I needed. I did it every 2 weeks until I got to about March, and then I switched it to once a month. And then after I got into April, so really only like 1 or 2 months, I did it once a month. Then I stopped fertilizing it altogether. It was getting big. The bottoms were starting to brown a little bit, so I knew that I was getting close. It didn't need any more fertilizer. So in April, after they were big and bushy and green and doing what they were supposed to, I started checking them. So the way that I check them is I just kind of dig away the soil, trying very hard not to disrupt the roots, but getting far enough down, and I had to really get far because like you plant them very far down, 4 to 5 inches, and I pull them away to see if they're starting to bulb. And like this, for example, is bulbing. And I reach around and I kind of feel it to see if I can feel the grooves that you would feel from a clove of garlic. So let's do this one, for example. I'm just gonna kind of dig around it because I don't want to damage. Wow. This one. Ooh. He was ready to come out. All right. So you can see that the bulbs, the cloves, have started to become distinguishable from the rest of the bulb. And that's really what you're looking for. You're also looking for taking these out when it's dry. Unfortunately, it rained quite a bit yesterday, so probably not the best time to take them out right now. But you want to start checking your progress a couple months before. So around April, start checking, just dig down in there to see if you're starting to see it bulb. If it's not bulb, just cover it back up with your mulch and your dirt. But if you're starting to see the bulge, start looking for the little bit of bulge that distinguishes a clove from another clove. And I don't mean look for a full dried, because it's not the same thing. You just want to see that there's actually like a clove happening here, and not necessarily that they're separated. Because what happens when you wait, like I did at first, is you get a garlic like this, where they ended up within just a couple days actually separating from each other and literally sprouting. So don't do this. Wait to start to see some of the distinguishing marks of the clove, and then that's when you're going to pull it up. So around April, May, or June, depending on your variety, is when you're going to want to start pulling your garlic up. You're also going to want to look for things like, this one looks pretty green, right? This one that I just pulled up looks pretty green, but you can see that some of the bottom leaves have started to dry out and they're starting to turn brown, and you got the tips that are turning brown. That is what's telling you that, hey, it's time to pull your garlic. So really look for those signs, and like I said, if all else fails, just dig down in there and check to see how the bulbs look. The next step in the process, which is what I did with these guys have been curing now for a week, and I have 3 kinds. I have one that never bulbed, I have one that bulbed, and I'm so excited, and then I have one that split apart. But I'm letting them sit until all the leaves turn brown and they dry out and they've got the nice papery skin. It's a little more obvious with this one, where you've got that paper skin happening like you would see in a clove of garlic at the grocery store. So once it starts to really lose all of the green and really brown up, I think it's going to take about 2 to 3 weeks. These are a week into drying. Then you'll be able to save them inside your house. For the 2 weeks that they're drying, leave them someplace that has some ventilation. Now, I was worried about leaving them outside. I thought they might sprout or something, but I actually did. I left them not in sun, but in my patio, my lanai. I have a table and it's got kind of slats in it so that it has some airflow, and I kept my fans on outside. And it is doing a great job at drying these, and they're not sprouting. It is warm. They're getting indirect sunlight, so not the best. If you have an area where you can put these where it's nice and cool and there's a good fan running, that's going to be your better bet out of light. But I don't really have a place like that in my house, so what I'm doing is I'm drying them out in my patio, and once they get to the point where I like them, I'm moving them to like milk crates, and I'm going to braid the tops together and then hang them so that they'll save even longer. And that's how I'm going to preserve some of these, by just drying the heads of garlic and keeping them inside hanging. Now, some of these other guys, it didn't really work out too well. This one I'm going to preserve in a different way, which is I'm going to actually slice this up like you kind of would an onion or a green onion, chop it, until I get to the dry parts. And then I'm going to put this in a dehydrator, and I'm going to dry it completely till it's crispy. And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to use my coffee grinder, and I'm going to grind this up into a powder, and it's basically going to be a garlic powder. And then these guys right here that cloved up and split apart, I'm going to take these individual cloves, separate them, mince them up, put them in ice cube trays, fill them with oil, whatever I would use in a standard dish, which being of Italian descent, we use at least 3 to 4 garlics in every dish pretty much. So I'm going to take 3 to 4 of these cloves, mince them up, put them in an ice cube tray, fill that ice cube tray with oil, olive oil, and I'm going to freeze them. And then once they're frozen, I'll separate them out of the ice cube trays and put them in a bag. And then whenever I have a dish that calls for sauteing onions, very simply, you just grab one of the ice cubes, you drop it in your pan, and you let it melt and cook down. And then you have your sauteed garlic. So those are the 3 ways that I plan on preserving my garlic. You can pickle them, and you can can them and stuff. I'm not going to do that until or unless if these guys don't dry as well as I would like them to, the whole cloves. If they don't dry as well or keep as well, when it gets closer to the time that they look like they're sprouting, I will take them, separate them, and I will probably pickle them, and then can them, water bath can them, to preserve them longer. I'm just trying to avoid the vinegar that's going to have to be involved, because I feel like that's going to affect the taste. I'm trying to figure out ways to preserve these in such a way that the taste is still there. So now I'm going to go ahead and pull the rest of this bed. I only used a half a bed to plant all my garlic. And the half a bed was probably, I think it was like 4 heads of garlic. I think there was almost 50 plants. So pretty good harvest so far. I'll show you a picture once I'm done. So that is all the steps of how to successfully grow garlic in your Florida garden. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to hit that subscribe or that like button for me, so that you don't miss out on any of our future videos.